Events aren't getting any cheaper, and they expect their event to get better every year, but not to spend more money. It's just not going to happen.
The time I body checked Shaquille O'Neal.
What? When you mentioned staffing, red flag went off in my head because I think immediately they think, oh, I can cut back on staffing. That's the place I can trim. And we are constantly saying,
Please don't. Should we feed our vendors and budget that into our costs?
keep.
Cut.
Do I have to clap? No. All right, we're back.
We're back. So exciting.
Season 2.
Season 2, we're so excited to be back and to talk more about all of the crazy things that we do every day of our lives. We are going to kick things off, I think, with a great Season 2 topic. It's all about the money, money, money.
Yeah.
It is all about what costs kill your event budget, which I think is huge as we start looking into the rest of 2025 and 2026.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I want to kind of kick us off with what are those hidden costs that you guys are always seeing that are killing our budgets?
Well, I think, to start us off, events aren't getting any cheaper. And, folks that are doing flat year-over-year budgets are just unrealistic as to what expectations are. And they expect their event to get better every year, but not to spend more money. It's just not going to happen. So, the first hidden cost is that things cost more today than they did yesterday, right?
Yeah.
The reality of inflation and all those things that, we don't need to explain the basics. But sometimes I feel like we do need to have that conversation with our client at the very beginning to say, I don't know what you've talk to your stakeholders about and where you've decided on these budgets. But if this is what you spent last year, you're going to need 5 to 10% more this year at a minimum. And I think that that's just a standard across the board, just to get us started. But, as to the individual elements of the event and where the hidden costs start to arise, for me, it's the staffing and the labor that tends to be that little thing that turns into a big thing very quickly. And, some of the decisions that you make can really impact how you spend your money, right? So for us, we're often talking to maybe 6, 10, 15 vendors for one event designed to come to life. If we can, and that means 16 different trucks sometimes, right? And 16 different sets of staff coming, or labor folks coming to, build these different elements to the event. When it comes down to the budget, is there a moment where we can look and say, hey, you know what? I know I loved that light blue linen that this provider had, but there's one that's slightly different, but we could get it from a vendor we're already using. Maybe we should look at that, and it can save thousands of dollars on labor and delivery, right? So that's a hidden cost that I think having that conversation up front, I know we don't always go really deep into just how many layers and people there are involved in bringing some of these events to life. But if we could talk about it enough to give alternative solutions or to have that transparent conversation, I think that we can really save our clients a lot of money. And so I encourage our clients that we work with to come back to us too and say, hey, where is that labor and delivery coming from? Is it coming from too many different vendors, or is it because that one structure is being custom built and is going to take 8 hours, and that's driving all the cost? And if we get rid of that one thing, it's going to make a huge difference too. So for me, labor and delivery is like a huge variable that you can't just assume 20 or 30% is going to cover you necessarily. It's all driven by
How many vendors you
venues
use.
and your customization again too. So.
Well, and I think it's important to note, because you say the 5 to 10% increase. I think we're also seeing a 5 to 10% decrease in budgets, right? They're saying, hey, we need to trim the budgets. We need to cut down on things. And you have to have realistic conversations with your clients. Like, great, if we're going to do that, then we have to get creative. And I think immediately when you mentioned staffing, red flag went off in my head because I think immediately they think, oh, I can cut back on staffing. That's the place I can trim. And we are constantly saying that is not the place to cut. It's going to really minimize the experience that your guests are going to have. It's really going to diminish the overall success of your program.
Yeah.
And so I think you have to get really comfortable with being a little bit of a no person in that situation, to say, that's not somewhere we're going to be flexible on. We're not going to let your team, load the buses on the curb.
I was just thinking, transportation for me is where staffing is almost the most important.
Exactly.
And it's the first place people say, oh, let's cut back on our transportation staff. Do we really need one person for every bus and, different scenarios? But yes, you really do.
Yeah, we've all been on the horror story.
Get on the phone.
Yeah.
There's a situation and you're driving the bus.
Yeah, we've all been in that horror story where, we bent for the client one time and it ended up being an incredible disaster, and every attendee walks away with a memory of the bus that broke down and there was no staff to get a hold of them, or the bus that took the wrong turn and dropped off at the wrong entrance, and that can all be mitigated by staff. So I think it's having the conversations of, if you can't increase your budget by that 5 to 10% and you're looking to trim the cost, like you said, getting creative with other areas that you can still have the same experience, but not trimming staff, not trimming the things that make the program move forward and move forward successfully.
Yeah. We've even required people to sign waivers when they cut staff. That's a new thing. And that, I encourage other, third-party organizations to do things like that, because you have to cover yourself. And if somebody says, I swear I have somebody from my team that'll handle that, I've heard that a million times. And then, they got caught up, doing sound check up the way and never made it down to the curb to load that bus. And, how many people were on the bus? I don't know. You told me you had a person and you signed that waiver saying I was no longer responsible for the staffing of that element. And that's the only way to cover it, because, it really is a cost that you need. And we try not to make it be a hidden cost, right? We want to put it right up front and lay it out for you. But when you're designing your budget in the very front end and saying, what is my whole program going to look like? You need to have a pretty good chunky section for staffing, and, not be surprised by that when you see our proposal or the proposal from the venue that had union labor, right? Let's talk about union labor for a minute.
Let's not talk about union.
That's a fun one tonight. Wait to kick off season 2, guys. We're really
getting us all angry in here. I feel like union labor is always hard too, because I think it's something that it's a conversation with the client where they might not understand why the hotel is union labor, and how we have that conversation changes also the way we work with the hotel as well. And you can cut staff, because if you have one event manager and you're bringing in 100+ linens and all these chairs, and who's setting that? That one event manager can't do all of that.
Right. And, I think too, union labor at convention centers drives a whole nother hidden cost that we always put a disclaimer, none of our pricing is including union labor. And we often get our clients that come back to us and say, well, can you provide me with an estimate of what that might look like? And at the time, we're usually proposing lots of different scenarios of what the experience is going to be like. So it's very hard to do an estimate. But if we are able to take, one scenario, drive one estimate around it, and we put it in front of them, I usually see a jaw drop when they realize the cost associated with the labor in some of these buildings that, we can't touch the items that we bring in, and we have to wait for somebody else to stand there and, set it up for us. And sometimes it's on their schedule and not ours. And it can drive a whole different set of surprise costs because something happened in a different part of the building and it created them to be late. And then they had overtime hours, and now all of a sudden your bill is higher, right? So that is something that we can have endless conversations with about up front. But it's still going to be a cost that you have to have a contingency plan or a contingency budget in place for, because surprises happen. It's inevitable.
Always.
Well, especially in a convention center. I think you're at the mercy of all the other things that are going on. One truck gets delayed. Someone gets backed up on the loading dock. They're supposed to have a call time of 9, but they don't get in and start setting up until 11. And then now they're into overtime hours at the end of the day. And it's like, you can fight those fights and you can push back a little bit, but it's kind of a joke that the union labor is going to win.
Don't fight it too hard.
Yeah, don't fight it too hard. So you have to kind of understand those contingencies and be prepared for it. I would love to know, what are some other areas of conversations that you're having about cost savings, or how to, you talked about the staffing, we talked about the, the vendor management to kind of minimize the amount of labor that you have. But what are some other things that kind of you're seeing, especially you, boots on the ground,
that
are
out there every day,
that are making cost savings conversations a little easier?
I think a lot of it too is going local for a lot of our things. Is that cuts a lot of the larger delivery fees of having something shipped in from somewhere in Texas that you're trying to get all the way to DC. So I think that's another thing that we're seeing is the push to go to more of those local people that can help you as boots on the ground rather than flying in. Because I think that's a lot of things that I'm seeing is the travel costs that get associated with entertainment, with decor pieces, anything like that. I mean, those are hidden costs to where I had one recently where, thank goodness I work with a team where I didn't catch a travel cost. And my event manager was like, hey, did you see the travel cost? I just noticed it wasn't in the budget. And we were able to catch it. We were able to charge everything accordingly. But that's another hidden cost that I think we don't, notice as much is those travel fees. They're in everything.
Well, and I think too, people are really leaning into for incentives, especially like the resort destinations that are maybe not in city centers. And there's a travel cost almost always when it comes to those destinations. So while you may be thinking, oh, last year we were in New York City and this year we are in, a more rural destination that, in your head may seem like it would be a more cost-effective destination, but you're not thinking about how far it is from a city center and how your entertainers are coming from that city center and your, even your event managers on our team. Sometimes we have to put our travel costs associated with our team to get on site and spend a whole week with you. And maybe there's a hotel room even associated. Even though we live in the destination, we may not live within 2 hours and our days are 16 hours. So when it's possible to budget in for some additional hotel rooms for your DMC partner, it's a really nice touch to be able to do. And you're going to get a little bit more out of us if we're on site with you for the whole time too, right? The juice is worth the squeeze in that case.
Absolutely. So. Yeah, you get a little bit more one-on-one time to get all the things done that pop up inevitably.
Yeah, but that's part of the relationship building too. And our team's happy to do it, but it's nice to build up front and not be surprised by.
Yeah. So when you guys are kind of doing costs and things of that nature, are you guys buffering or how are you kind of making sure that you're always, CYA, covering yourself? And, if things do come up where, contingency plan is in place or you didn't catch a hidden cost, is it something where you have to go back to the client or is it something that might already be costed in that you can still take care of without having to go back to the client?
Well, I think it's, appropriate to be transparent that we obviously buffer in overhead costs just like any company would to make sure that things that do inevitably pop up and there might be, costs that we weren't expecting or things get added and we're trying to be accommodating to clients. So we want to make sure that we have those things built in. So we do estimate that. But I think, it's also understanding that it's okay to have the conversation too with your client that like this is a tentative cost until we get the final details pulled together. And as soon as we have those for you, we're comfortable sharing those. But feeling confident enough to say, I want to get this as accurate as possible until we finalize all of the details of this program from load in to load out. There may be some variables that we have to consider.
Well, and sometimes you have to put a range on some things.
Yeah.
And there's also things that come up like, for example, rain plans or moving an event from one space to a different space because something came up and, you needed to shift things around, right? And those are things that aren't planned in advance. And so, you have to have that conversation up front to say, hey, if we move from X venue to Y venue, these are things that are going to be costed and I can't give you those exact numbers because we're on site in the middle of it all. So just be prepared for a final invoice to come that's going to have some additions on it. And if you have that conversation in the moment to say like, this isn't going to be, free to do, but we can do it because, we're always making changes. And there's always those moments where that, CEO walks in and says, oh, I don't love the way this, setup is, or I wish that we had one more of these or whatever it is. And you want to make it happen for them, but you have to tell your client up front, hey, we can do this, but there is a cost and it will be reflected on your final invoice. Now, when there's something that comes up and maybe it's a mistake that we made or something that they didn't feel was maybe at the level of what they were looking for or, something in that scenario, that's when I think we are buffering for if we have to eat costs. I'm not afraid to eat costs for a relationship. And I will say I've been in this scenario way more times than I'd like to count where I've said, okay, we'll pay for those centerpieces that came late. Or, I've paid for buses that, broke down and I didn't drive the bus and I wasn't a mechanic, but we hired that company and, all we can do is hope that company will treat us well, on the back end. But, even if they won't, we're going to pay for it
Right.
because it's our relationship with you that matters to me the most. And so I think when we talk to our clients about, hey, what is the cost of doing business and why do we have to charge what we have to charge? And, some of our clients come back and say DMCs are expensive and we went direct on this because of your costs. It's like, well, you're getting all these little extras along the way that you don't even realize. So we have to cost what we cost in order for you to get that level of service that you're getting. So you pay for service. And that's what we try to provide.
So let's dig in there because I think, again, being transparent is, I think, a key here in this conversation. What are some of the costing models that we typically will approach, and what works and what doesn't work? And sometimes it's variable from client to client, but I think there's some standardization around it. So I'd love to get your input there.
Yeah, so I think, there's two general ways of seeing pricing from a DMC. You either see a bundled price that has all of the costs built in, and there's no surprises when you get your final invoice. There's no like, oh, here's the line for tax, and here's the line for, a professional services fee or any other surprises. So when you present a client with a proposal, you're like, it's an all-in number. This is what the dinner is going to cost, $250, $350, whatever it is, period, right? And that's an all-in number. That's how we like to do business because we can help our clients budget better, right? And this hidden costs conversation is so relevant there. Now, we also have our clients that come to us and say, we want to see that. Our procurement wants to see that more often, right?
There you go. That's
so they want to see a professional services fee, a management fee, call it whatever you want to call it. We call it a professional services fee. And, the traditional number is that like 20%, 25%, somewhere in that ballpark. But the reality is the cost of doing business as a DMC is more than that.
Yeah.
And I just want to kind of set the record straight that like, you're not, we can offer you discounts, and the more, components of the events that you put on us to manage, the more we can be flexible, but it's not a line by line, 20%, 20%, 20%.
Right.
Everything that we do has the ability to be, discounted potentially, or to have a larger contingency needed to be built around it, right? So we don't go and say 20% on every line across the board. We look at something and say, you know what, we're going to use this vendor for that, and they give us a really great discount, so we can extend that discount to the client, and it's going to actually be cheaper than a 20%. And then this line over here, we need to build in a little extra for travel, and we need to build in a little extra for that, and it might be more like 30% for that item. And we don't know exactly what that's going to look like because we are designing every event custom and curated for each customer, and that's why doing a bundled pricing model tends to work better for us. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that we wouldn't be in business if we were at like an 18% professional services fee line item that was on the bottom of every proposal. And so when a company does list that for you, just be realistic to know that that's why they have to charge for their event manager and their design fees and all these other lines along the way, insurance fees, venue support costs. I mean, there's so many elements to the program that have to have some additional costs associated for the company, or truly we wouldn't be able to be in business.
Right.
Yeah.
And you made a good point too. I think the volume piece is really key. Mm-hmm. The more you are able to give us the full scope of the program, from arrivals at the airport to departures at the end, we have a lot more flexibility to get creative with our pricing, to offset different costs, to reduce certain areas. Maybe there are pain points for stakeholders. They hate seeing transportation costs that exceed a certain number. We have flexibility there because we can be creative with those kind of line item costs to make sure that we're showing that cost savings however you want to see it. So I think that's the other key. Work with a DMC. Give us all the business for the program.
Don't split the program between two DMCs.
Don't do that. That's never a good idea.
It does make it harder for both of us and harder for you having to do everything twice. But we're willing to do it, of course. But, as simple as transportation, right? We're going to call our transportation partner and say, hey, this is a two-way program of 400 people, and we've got all this, business for you. If we can go into it knowing that in the very first conversation, we can get you a much better price point off the top, versus if we know we might get one piece and we might not get the evening event transportation, like it's going to potentially cost you more money if we don't have it all under one roof. So
100%.
Things to think about.
I've even had clients before see our costing and then be like, oh, it's too expensive for me. They decide to do it themselves, either DIY or get it from someone else. And then the event ends and they look at me and they're like, I'm never doing that again. I need you to take care of everything next time. Because they realize that with what we're doing, we are helping them save time. We are helping them save stress. We're helping them save their team time. I think there's a lot of things within what we do to buffer that explains what all of the effort that goes in behind the scenes as well. And our clients really are thankful that they can just say, here's my event, passing it on to your plate. Let me know when it's good to go and I'll take it back. You know, I think that's one thing that's really, really beneficial for us.
Well said.
Yeah.
We've seen it all, from power surges to talent overages, and we know how to keep your budget intact. At CSI DMC, experiences meets foresight. Let's plan smarter together. All right, it's time for some keep it or cut it.
All right.
So we're going to do rapid fire round. I'm going to call out some common budget line items, and then you guys are going to tell me what's essential or maybe what's a little extra. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's
All
get into
right.
it.
Staffing. One person running registration and guest services at the same time. Keep or cut?
Depends on the group size.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think you could make it work.
TBD.
Yeah.
Give us another one.
Okay, one more. No dedicated crew for load-in, just relying on the venue staff.
Oh, keep the crew. You need the crew for load in, load out every time. The venue staff might tell you, but if you're not, 100% sure on who's going to be there and how they're going to do it, I can't.
No. Yeah. No.
Also, is the place union? Ask the
we
questions.
We just had that conversation,
Yeah.
so I think we all know how we feel about that.
All right. Transportation. Booking the lowest bid shuttle company without vetting their fleet or drivers.
Cut it.
Keep or cut?
Cut it.
Cut it. Get the hell out of here.
Everyone thinks transportation is where they can cut corners, but it is the first point of experience for your guests when they arrive. That's it.
It's make or
First
break.
impression.
It's make or break.
You don't
literally
have guests getting on a dirty bus with a bus driver that's like,
yeah. It's
the whole
They
time.
will remember that
They
more than
will.
the venue that they got to that you spent way more money on.
Yep. They'll be going right to the bathroom. All right. Weather. Hosting everything outside with no indoor contingency.
Oh, I've lived that life and learned that lesson. I had a client that was 3,000 people in Las Vegas planning an outdoor welcome reception.
Okay.
It's the desert. It never rains.
Oh, yeah.
Quote unquote.
Totally heard that before.
Last words. Yep. No, we had to move the whole event inside to a convention center space that was supposed to be in this beautiful outdoor space. And now every year when we plan this event for the client, they require us to make sure that whatever 3,000 to 4,000 person venue we find has enough space to cover them from any sort of rain incident that may or may not occur in no matter what city that they're in. So Boston, Denver, all kinds of other places were, limited to 4,000 person venues as it is. And now we have to be even more limited because we have to make sure it can cover everyone. So you have to keep a rain plan in place.
Keep it there, I guess.
Yes.
Strong keep. I love it. All right. Signage. Skipping branded shuttle wraps to save budget.
Cut it.
I think you can live without branded shuttle wraps.
Yep, I think so.
I think in today's digital world, you can do a lot of other places where you can brand for a lot less money.
Yeah.
Do you know you have to take a shuttle bus out of circulation for a full day? Sometimes 3 to 4 days to wrap the bus.
That's crazy.
So now you're paying for that bus for 5 days and only using it for one potentially.
Also, the expense on wrapping a bus.
And that's before the expense of the bus. That's just to take it out of.
Yeah.
And have we all seen the buses that have rolled by with like a conference from like 6 months ago and there's still kind of a piece peeled onto it? And you're like, why do we bother?
Right. You think it's that Carrie Bradshaw Sex and the City moment of the bus going by, and it's so not.
Or you hire a bad vendor and they're like doing it to where your nose is like here, your mouth is over here.
No. Line up those seams. Come on.
Well, not us. We vet our vendors.
Okay,
that's the important thing. All right, vendors. Should we feed our vendors and budget that into our costs?
Keep.
Cut.
You're not going to feed your vendors?
Can you please explain more?
You have to budget it in, but in my opinion, the vendor meals have turned into rubber chicken, and I get more complaints from my vendors that say, I can't believe you were going to feed me this, than to actually, provide them with what they want. So I say cut it from your food order, from your BEO, but give them a DoorDash, a Grubhub, an Uber Eats, and get them what they want. Order a pizza, get them something that's actually going to be edible and something that they, helps their dietary preferences and all the other things about.
Yeah. I kind of like that because it does, I've run into an issue where I've said, oh yeah, you have a vendor meal, no problem. You're going to get exactly what the guests get, and they are walking through the buffet line. So I think you're onto something.
Yeah, the buffet line is great.
That's crazy. So maybe we just make that the standard moving forward.
Yeah, I think so. I've
everyone.
also been in this scenario where I've had vendors, publicly shame us on social media because they took a picture of their awful vendor meal and said, like, look, another piece of stale, blah, 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 right? And then I've had vendors that have posted the lobster that they got served and was like, CSI is the best because they served me lobster tonight. And, you've got to work with that. And you don't want to be shamed on social media because you gave the vendor something bad.
That's a good point.
Yeah. It's the last thing you want to be thinking about.
I think the rule is keep the vendors happy.
Keep the vendors happy. However you
I'm
need to do
glad we let you explain your side on that because I was getting a little worried there. All right, let's do one on signage.
Okay.
All right, live interpreters for your attendees. Keep or cut?
I don't think we need live interpreters. I'm going to go cut it.
I'm going to go keep it.
Okay.
I think it's nice to have the closed captioning, but I think having the live interpreters, if it's an extra ability to provide inclusivity for our guests, I think if we can make it happen and we have the needs, I think we absolutely keep it.
See, I think with technology now, the closed captioning covers us, and there's also ways to, put it right on their phones or give them a tool of some sort where they get the content. But that doesn't have to be with a live impersonator, and that's a place on your budget that maybe you can.
All right.
cut.
Okay.
I'm sensing a fight.
I just feel like I'm always going like this, and then I'm like doing like quadruple chin. I'm like,
If this episode helped you spot even one line item you'd been missing, do us a favor. Subscribe right here on YouTube. Every week, we're diving deep into things planners really face and giving you the edge to do your best work. Click subscribe so you never miss a beat. All right, I've got a really good confession, and I'm really excited to read it. So let's get into it. The time I body checked Shaquille O'Neal.
what?
You can just call it that. You can just leave it right there. We're done.
That's it. The story is there. I'm working a live NBA broadcast. We're going a full lineup of Vegas-style showgirls, glam, glitz, national TV. 3 minutes to go live. I'm doing the final check, hair, makeup, cuffs, sparkle, and I spot it. One showgirl is missing her choker. Without hesitation, I sprint down the stadium's back halls like I'm being chased by security, and a glitter bomb is about to explode. I take a sharp corner, top speed, and slam into what feels like a padded brick wall. Except it moves.
No.
I look up. It's Shaquille O'Neal.
Seriously?
I physically bounce off of Shaq. He doesn't flinch. I apologize like my life depends on it, grab the choker, and book it back. And yeah, maybe I was a little embarrassed, but now I'm one of the very few people on earth who can say they body-checked a sports legend. Sure, I bounced off of him, but honestly, I walked away feeling kind of badass.
I mean, hell
Did he
yeah.
yell Kazam when it happened?
Very cool. I wonder if she gave up to his waist or he gave up to his waist.
Or like if there's any bruises anywhere on her.
Like, what did Shaq say to her? Like, that's what I want to know. Like, was he like
can I have
are
the
you
joke?
okay?
Right.
That's so good. Gosh, I love a good confession.
And I really wonder, like, did she get the choker? Did everything go well?
Yeah.
Right.
Are the
Real
showgirls
situation.
good?
Yeah, like
3 minutes. That's a tough turnaround on a stadium.
Yeah, did Shaq watch the showgirl?
Yeah.
This is part of the show. Did she know
was
he was there?
I have
So
so,
much
many.
to unpack.
I have so many questions.
Shaq in a showgirl outfit.
I think it goes to show you that in
Never stretching.
Shaq and a showgirl.
You know you could chat GBT and I'm sure it'll come up with an image.
Let's drop an image in right now.
Yeah.
I think it goes to show we'll do anything. Run into NBA players to keep our clients happy. Make the show go on.
Yeah.
Make the Shaq go on.
Next time on Event Planner Confessions, we're talking about the big power of small events, why clients are shifting to micro, and what that means for planners who want to keep up. Trust us, you'll want to be there.
Thanks for listening to Event Planner Confessions, where experience is everything, and we've got stories to prove it.